Hello, welcome back to the channel. So today is part 2 of the original Diff wheel bearing and CV replacement. So we're going to start off by putting the hub straight back in. If you haven't checked out part 1, that will include all the removal. So what I'm doing here, I'm just going to go and clean up the old RTV that's on the Diff. So I'm just using carb cleaner and picking off all the lumps. And then we're going to apply a nice bead of high temperature gasket, instant gasket, with the new nuts I've ordered. And then make sure whatever instant gasket you use, whether it's the Land Rover one or the one I'm using here, that you follow the instructions. So this one says to apply it and then leave it for about half an hour before you torque it up. So which is what I'm going to do in this bit. So let's get the Diff back in. It's a second-hand user. It's a 2-pin Diff, this front one, because this is a diesel, and let's crack on with that. So what I'm going to do here, we're going to go around with the high temperature instant gasket. And this is one I've used in engine rebuilds, and it's really good instant gasket. I highly recommend it. You can buy it on Amazon. But so I'm going to go and spread around the mating faces of the Diff here, obviously making sure that it's clean. I am going to put a little bit on the threads as well, because I have found they have creeped through the threads and then leaked around the nuts you put on. So when you're applying this, you don't want to go too thick, because remember, when you push the Diff back in, everyone goes a bit berserk and puts too much instant gasket on, and as you squish it together, it actually pushes inside the Diff as well. So you want to try and judge it so it's just the right amount to give a good coverage. It probably looks like I've put more on in the video here than I actually have, but it's not a particularly thick bead, sorry. So here we go, we're going to put the Diff in now. It's incredibly heavy, especially when you're at a 90-degree angle and upside down, but bear with it. You see the 2 bolts on the side, that's where the harmonic dampener would go if you had got one. This car doesn't have one, so you obviously want to remove that if you're putting it back in, because it's extra weight. So once you've aligned the bolts up, push it in, and now we're going to apply the bit of instant gasket around the thread, and then I'm going to put the new nuts on, which are here, where you can buy them from. So we're going to do those up. We're going to do them up nice and evenly, and then the manual doesn't specify which pattern to do them up, so I'm just going to do them in a zigzaggy pattern still, but we're going to do them up to half the torque it specifies at the moment until the instant gasket's had about 30 minutes, and then I'll go and torque them up to 40 Newton meters that it says in the manual. And then that's it, the Diff is done. We need to fill it up, put the prop shaft back on, tighten the prop shaft bolts up to 48 Newton meters. Again, you should replace the nuts. And that is done for the Diff, so we'll move on to the wheel bearings. So now, right, so remember 4 new bolts for the back section of the wheel bearing. I'm just going to put a little bit of copper grease in there, so if it has to come out again. We're going to get the hub. So I'm just going to give this a little clean, make sure you can't bloody wind. I'm just going to give this drive shaft a quick clean off. It's got a bit grubby in the garage. I don't want anything in the splines. And obviously make sure, you can't see it, but just make sure I'm remove my leg. Make sure the flange that sits inside the seal is nice and clean as well. Like this. Okay, good. Now I'm not going to bother greasing this up, because obviously I'm going to fill it up with oil in a minute anyway. I am going to put a little bit of grease around the flange though, so it doesn't snag against the rubber. spot itself. Okay, let's put the camera back up. Don't get my leg in it. Put a little bit of grease around there. There's no dirt. Lovely. Okay, and then we're going to lift this drive shaft up. If you're putting these back in without replacing anything, just make sure that you haven't got any rips in the rubber. And as we go in, just be very careful on the new seal. And then you should feel it just go into the diff. That's it, like that. And then just waiting for the last section there just to line into the diff itself, hopefully. And then that should go in like that. Oh, with a little bit of luck. Oh, and that's in. And I'm just going to put a bit of grease around that bolt there. We'll just line the first one up. Oh, nice. Always goes back together lovely when there's nice new parts involved. Okay, so I'm going to go and tighten these 4 bolts up, and then I will come back with the torque spec. And just make sure when you look down the ABS hole there's nothing blocking. Some of the aftermarket, this one particularly was the same. Sometimes they don't fit the surround around the CV joint properly and it blocks the ABS sensor. So the 4 bolts are in loosely, and the torque was 135 Newton meters with a 15mm socket. That's got 135, which is there. We need to make some room here. Ow! 35. Oh, that's it. Okay, top one. Done. Good. Okay. Right, I do need to go and put the other side back in before I go any further on this side, just to make sure the diff is all okay. But the next stage here, once I've checked that, is we're going to put the ABS sensor in, put the drag link back in, 50 Newton meters for that, put the steering arm link back in, track roll ends, there again 50 Newton meters on those. Well, check which, if you have new ones, some of them recommend 60 Newton meters. And we will then readjust this nut in the middle. Now it's back on the wheel, back on the car, and just make sure that's done up to the correct torque, and then I'll punch that. Okay, but other than that, I think we're just ready to put the brakes and disc back on this side. So let me go and do the other side quickly. Right, so the next stage is to fit the new ABS sensors. I'm just going to drop them down from the top. And we'll plug that in. Okay, so that's plugged in. Right. And then obviously you need to route it accordingly to where the rubber insets are. You might find they're a little bit rusty, so you may have to cable tie them. See, that one goes around like that. Sometimes the rubber's not quite, you might find it's not quite in the right place. You may have to
move it or cable tie it. This one's too high up. Sometimes you can slide them down, other times you can't. Yeah, no, these are not moving. Okay, they weren't particularly expensive, these ones. I thought I'd give them a try. So, comes with a new cage. Doesn't come with any grease. Alright, so I'm just going to put a bit of grease on the cage. Not copper grease because it can interfere with the ABS sensor apparently. Never tried it, so I don't know. I'm just going to grease that up. And the main purpose of that is so we don't get a repeat what happened when I came to remove the old ones. Okay, I want to tap that in. Like that until it's home. Smear some grease around the sensor. Now, before you put the sensor in, if you've plugged them both in the other side, I would probably switch the ignition on and just make sure you don't get an ABS fault, because it's not the first time I've purchased ABS sensors and they've been faulty. Obviously, don't drive it, move it, because you will get an ABS sensor fault, but it shouldn't. It'll come up with the light as always, but if there's a problem, it'll come up with ABS fault. So just test that before you push this in. And then let's go get a mallet. But I'm not actually sure what I've done with my mallet, so I'm going to use my Thor copper hammer and just gently, and you'll feel once it's home, hear the tone change. So that is that. Your rubber should line up around there. This one's hopelessly bad. Yeah, they're completely in the wrong place. But I'll sort that out another time, that's fine. Okay.
Okay, so the last part of this video is just to torque up the hub nut, drive shaft nut. So the new ones are always bigger, so I always keep a couple of the originals, which are 32mm. You can still buy them direct from Land Rover, only because I don't have the socket that fits the new nut. So 260 Newton meters. Just be careful when you do this, you don't lift it off the axle stands, but if it's correctly situated, it should be fine. If not, lower the car down, put the wheel back on, and do it that way. But so just going to torque this up to 260, and that's pretty much the assembly done. So, lovely. Alright, so the last and final job is to put the drain plug back in. Remember, the magnet goes at the bottom, and that's not the filler, so I'll put that back in there, make sure it's clean. This one is. So there is a torque for these, but I don't tend to torque them, I just set them up. Not overly tight, but you'll feel it when it's like that. Okay, then I filled up my laser
pressurised transfer pump. If you haven't got one, I can tell you which one it is. Very handy. Filled it with oil, and then basically we now just fill until it comes out of the hole. So it should take around 2.5 litres, I think it is, of whatever diff oil your book recommends. This one says 80 watt 90, so that's what I'm using. It's just, it's going to take quite a while, so I think I'll end the video there. So thanks very much for watching. You probably can't even see me, but thanks very much for watching, and hopefully we'll go for a test drive and see if this fixes it.